Good morning on a gorgeous, beautiful spring day in Milwaukee. It won't be I guarantee you we'll still have to fire up the snow blowers before the year end. I say things like that because I want more snow. I'm not done with it. I'll be done with it after St. Patty's Day. Anyways, I'm not done with my ski season yet. It's what keeps me going through the winter. All right. So, welcome back, team meeting. It's been 2 weeks. So I'll give you an update of what we're going to go through today, and I'll tell you what we're going to do next week because it's already baked. This week, I'm going to go through kind of January results, celebrate people. I'm going to give you an update on my conversation on the MLS. And then I'm going to finish the presentation with last week, there were about 50 of us who attended family reunion in Las Vegas. One of the first mornings, which I know we also streamed in all the offices, was Gary's vision speech, which he gives every year. It's about 2.5 hours. I will synthesize it down for you in about maybe 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how deep I go into it. I will synthesize part 1 this morning. Part 2 will be next week. So this morning, I'll focus on the macroeconomic conditions of what's going on globally. I'm not going to touch on, they touched on some trade and tariff and a lot of, in my opinion, maybe a little too deep into politics. So I'm not going to touch on that this morning, just to give you a forewarning. And then next week, I'll talk about how all of this plays a part in how it impacts our industry and what you need to be thinking about and how you structure your businesses in order to win in 25. Cool. And then as a follow-up to that, I synthesize all the slides for you, and you will see today that I have all of my notes so that you will get one presentation. If you want the full presentation, it's available to you now on KW RealtyMKE.com under the Agent Hub and the Resources tab. The full presentation is available to you today. My full presentation will be available with all of my notes in yellow. The first part will be today. The next part will be next week. Cool? All right, sweet. So a lot of information coming at you probably in the next 3 weeks. I also have been working in the background to synthesize some of the data around what's being accepted. So I'll make sure we get that to you next week as well. A lot of things we're working on to make sure that we're impacting you with value. So jumping into it first, mission, vision, values, beliefs, and perspectives. And what I think one of the things that's important around is grounding ourselves in our mission and how we live our lives and how we choose to operate our businesses. And a big piece of it is to think about and ground ourselves in around how we build careers worth having, businesses that are worth owning, right? Businesses that are worth owning, not jobs that are worth jobbing. Businesses that are worth owning, lives that are worth living, experiences worth giving, and legacies that are worth leaving. And 2 weeks ago, we had an opportunity to kind of what I call do the awards roadshow. And we had a really great celebration of energy, culture, community, people, and bringing people together to kind of cultivate and recognize like the level of success and productivity of the environment that you guys are a part of. And on Monday, 2 weeks ago, we celebrated the group out in Prestige and held a great little morning together and cultivating the Prestige community. On Tuesday, we hosted the North Shore Innovation Group with around 200 plus people. And the impact and cultivating of that is profound. And then on Wednesday, we were supposed to hold Southwest, but then we got 12 inches of snow. So we had to redirect. That's this week. And then on Thursday of 2 weeks ago, we hosted out in Lake Country with the Lake Country crew. And you know what's not lost on me when you think about sorry, I'm just trying to move some of this around. Is when you really bring people together, you recognize that like, well, yes, you compete for listings and you compete for things on a daily basis. Like at the end of the day, I think there's a real genuine appreciation for your peers and the community that we've built and the level of productivity and success that you surround yourself with and how you learn from each other, how you build each other up. How in moments of tough times you help each other realize that like the storm will end, and that recognizing like those moments are okay to stop, slow down, and just take life in and be present. And so it's a good reminder of like, yes, it's awards, and yes, we're celebrating people, and yes, it really goes back and honing in our mission statement of business is worth owning, experience is worth giving, legacy is worth leaving, is also like being present in the moment. And I think sometimes is a good reminder around recognizing who we do it with and how we do it. So a handful of people to celebrate in January because of the lull or the lag in the 2 weeks of not having a team meeting. I wanted to make sure that we recognize the handful of folks. So first up, coming at you live from the innovation office. This is a great example of someone who left corporate America, understood structure, understood accountability, understood what it takes to be successful. Heather Banks, congrats on capping in the month of January. Next up, someone who's been in our environment for several years, works on a very, very successful team, keeps her head down, blinders on, and just goes about her business in a very professional manner. Always incredibly positive, is one of those people that you come into and like there's a spark and a spunk about her. Congrats to Holly Gamblin on capping in the month of January. Next up, also heading back out to the innovation office, one of our top profit share earners routinely on an annualized basis is very focused on it, very intentional around building his business. Has learned building big, scaling down, learning how to navigate what it is to build a team and lead through others. Kevin Gardy, congrats on capping in the month of January. Next up, someone who's always willing to give back, teaches, and as he says when he gives his listing presentation, you know, people will say, well, why do you give it that? And why do you give so much? Why do you give? Why do you give? And he says, because I know you aren't me and you can't replicate it. But he's always willing to share, always willing to give, building a big team and learning how to build success through others. Jay Schmidt, congrats on capping in the month of January. And then lastly, in the month of January, a relatively newer to the broader scope of the MKE umbrella, but been involved in the Prestige Market Center for a little while, is another great example of how running a family business can work and it can be healthy. This is an individual that works with her son. Also, what I've heard and I've yet to experience is an incredible baker, lives up in Port Washington. Kay Schmidt, congrats on capping in the month of January. All right, so let's recap January results real quick because you know, it's interesting. While everything around us from a noise perspective is like a lot of hesitation, everyone's talking about price drops, everything else, I'll tell you this, and we'll dive into this in a few weeks. The southeastern Wisconsin data is still very robust and very strong and very healthy. And I think the January results are a reflection of the level of productivity that our people are doing. So I want to give a shout out to the Home Run Club in the month of January. January historically is like a 1-column month. The fact that it's 2 columns, and I would need cheaters to be able to read everybody, is incredible. But the reason why I share that with you is, again, taking stock into how and who you learn from is incredibly important. And the fact that we had such an incredible group of people who had a home run club in the month of January, which is 1 listing taken, 1 contract written, and 1 contract close, during historically, it's a seasonally adjusted, the slowest month every single year in residential real estate from a transactional standpoint. Next up, $1 Million Month Club in the month of January. Shout out to Abby Myers, Abby Wall, Elena Zeman, Ann Kleber, Bridget Gallagher, Kathy Shaw, Dan Wild, Holly Speranza, Jason Sterling, Jess Annabelle, Joey Carini, John Bula, John Molitor, Jordan Shelton, Judy Hebner, Judy Moffett, Kevin Gardy, Leanne Pluster, Lindsay Andrews, Mark Krieger, Martha Ola, Melena Cortez, Michaela Collar, Molly Gallagher, Natasha Meyer, Paris Hebner, Patrick Young, Richard Rubin, Robin McCormick, Stephanie Minnick, Will Stallé, Holly Gamlin, Janine Warner, and Jay Schmidt. Congrats on having $1 million month in the month of January. These are people that are kicking it off so far, leading the pack in terms of volume and percentage increase so far and coming out of the gates hot. Shout out to Levine Realty Group, Julia LaDuca, Craig Harden, Shannon Schultz, Jordan Tybinko, Katie Sayers, Robin McCormick, Deborah Croft, Christy Stans, the Gossman Group, Elena Zeman, Ann Youngworth, Jesse Baranzik, Julie Bolgren, Jan Von Dalm. Congrats on having killer Januaries. GCI for agents on a team: Janine Warner, Melena Cortez, Will Stallé, Holly Gamblin, Kathy Rosenheimer, Martha Ola, Casey Lopez, Katie Thomas, Stephanie Minnick, JOC, Kathy Shaw, Gail Green, Say Kilp, Spencer Harvey, and Ben Davis, rounding out for those on teams for GCI earned. Lindsay Andrews is an individual agent, just killing her January. 6 units closed. Abby Wall, John Blah, John Molitor, Mark Fondo, Jordan Shelton, Robin McCormick, Sarah Oberbrunner, Judy Moffett, Joey Carini, Mark Krieger, William Lauer, and Michaela Collar. Congrats on killer Januaries. And then team units for January. HWC 26, Root River 18, House to Home 12, On Point, Fall Proven, Rutino Kuiper, A Key Home, Stallé, Holt, PPG, PFPG. I got to get that right now with a little bit of a name change, branding update. Love it. Wessel Group, Miller Marriott, Enlighten, Duval, and MTM Collective rounding it out for January. Individual volume, shout out to Robin McCormick out in Lake Country, Dan Wild and Innovation, Elena Zeman out in Lake Country, Jess Annabal, Junie Voffett, Lindsay Andrews, Ann Kleber, Mark Krieger, Jordan Shelton, Michaela Collar, Pat P.Y., Abby Wall, Joey Carini, John Molitor, John Bulow, Sarah Oberbrunner, Gene Jaskowski, Jordan Reggett, Lara, CJ Lewandowski. A little tongue-tied this morning. In January team volume, HWC leading the way in January at 13.5, FRG, House to Homes, SRG, Gallagher Lake Country On Point, Root River, Enlighten, Rutino Kuiper, A Key Home, PFPG, Holt, Losnacki, Wessel, Duval, Miller Marriott, MTM Collective, Revolution, Team Trimble, and Dusty's team rounded out for January team volume. Congrats, guys, on a killer January. All right. So, couple office operations and announcements updates to pay attention to. We've been sharing our updated org chart because we've had a lot of new faces and new names. You'll see some reels dropping because we want you guys comfortable with everyone who's in all of our locations, that whenever you show up, you feel comfortable with who's leading you or the services that you can come to expect whenever you enter any of our environments. With that, though, we are still hiring and we have an open role. I'll tell you, I've had a lot of success in hiring through my network. We post it on Indeed. We post it in a million places. We interview a ton of people. And yet I always go back to, like, I am 2 or 3 degrees away of separation from our next hire, and we're constantly looking for talent. And so if you know of anybody that's looking to either A, join the leadership team, you're an agent and just, you know what, looking for a bit more structure and a bit more stability with a room for growth, or you know of someone outside of our environment who should be in our environment, maybe they're outside of the industry. They don't need industry experience. We like shaping new minds in fresh molds of clay. So if you know of anybody that's looking for a role, we're looking for a director of first impressions in the New Berlin office. And always appreciate how our community shows up to be able to provide us talent. As I always like to say, I like hiring 2 degrees of separation. With that, also want to remind you guys, we are in tax season. 1099s have come out. 1099s for profit share have come out. Your transactional reports should be available to you. Your deduction reports, all itemized deductions as it relates to expenses. Anything you might need, you should have received an email from someone on the team. With a Google Drive this year, everything is being done virtually so that when you need it, we can just simply reshare your Google Drive again in order to help you mitigate what you pay Uncle Sam. Sound good? Love it. All right, let's talk about a very hot button topic. Maureen, Kimmy, and I had the opportunity to sit down with Chris Carrillo at the MLS for 90 minutes about 2 weeks ago on a Wednesday, and I shared with you kind of a hypothesis of a thesis around what we were going in to ask him for, since he asked us for the meeting and he asked us to come with ideas. And I shared with that a few weeks ago heading into the meeting, and so I kind of want to share with you an update as to where that stands, and I want to give you a disclaimer. Nothing has been settled or agreed to, and I'm not giving you timelines on anything. I'm just sharing you the energy of what was returned based on what we asked for. Okay? First of our strategic priorities is we really tighten the screws around our ask that I've been basically asking for 8 years since I've been doing this for individual agent IDX feeds. This is your ability to run any tech platform you desire by plugging directly into a data feed into the MLS. What that allows you to do, it allows you more access to the information of how your consumers are interacting within the data and the space to help you increase conversion and a variety of other things that you may or may not know or realize. Milwaukee is only one of 2 major metropolitan areas across the entire US, Pittsburgh being the other, that doesn't allow individual agent IDX feeds. There's not enough time and place to go into why that is, but most of you probably know and can read in between the lines as to why that is. The second piece was the syndication of delayed listings to all portals and platforms. Basically, the argument is like, there's no reason why any of us should be sitting at a soccer game on a Saturday morning, scrolling through the hot sheets so that we can be the first to inform our clients when the data is already readily available. Just push out the damn data. Gosh darn it. I mean, like, just make our lives easier. And then the third was placing standards around the 48-hour rule. Okay. Now, I'll go back to that. One, I've been pushing this for about 8 years, and I would tell you there is more receptivity to the idea and concept now than I would say there ever has been. Quite frankly, I've left some of those meetings as they were very contentious, and I didn't feel good about leaving them. This was a totally different tune. I left and I was like, something's changing. I think a lot of it has to do with what the industry went through in the last 18 months, and they're finally waking up as to what their control mechanisms are. But I'm positive in terms of where I believe the MLS is going as it relates to individual agent IDX feeds. No promises, no timelines. But as I said to Chris, did anybody watch House of Cards? Okay, remember when Kevin Spacey was trying to get things done when he was in Congress? And he was the whip? I said, Chris, if you need a good whip, I can crack a good whip. So if you need votes, if you need board members to think about it, I said, I'll take any meeting one-on-one. You just tell me, I'm happy to be the whip. It's moving in a positive direction. Two, I think will happen more sooner rather than later. I believe we will syndicate delayed listings. I think there's a lot of pressure from a lot of places in order to get that done. And I'm very optimistic that we're moving in a positive direction. Number three, and I think three is a little bit controversial because I think some people understand the strategy and how people take advantage of the loophole. I think three is probably the least of their priorities and probably the least likely to get done. I think it should be, my personal opinion, and I'll share it with the group, is if you have a full-blown $6,000 drone package with, I don't know, 3D printed whatever and all this stuff, and you can get a house staged, you should be able to get it in the MLS, by the time you start marketing it. But I digress. I won't go there. That, I think, is the least likely to get done. Number one and number two, which were number one and number two for me going into it, seem very optimistic, very positive, very receptive. And so we're going to keep pushing that forward. And I'm going to take the role of, what's his name in House of Cards? Thank you. Underwood. Frank Underwood. Thank you. I don't want to be Kevin Spacey, but I'll be Frank Underwood. I was hesitant to say his name. So I wanted to make sure, because I publicly came out and said what we were working towards, I wanted to make sure that I was following back up with the group around what we're continuing to push behind the scenes. And if you have thoughts, comments, concerns, questions, feel free to shoot them to us. Yeah, of course. All right, education and events, and then I will go right into the vision speech part one. So coming up, your business will grow to the extent that you do. You will grow to the extent of those whom you surround yourself with. I've been harping on that lately because it's important to remember and take stock into who you're doing this with, right? March training calendar is robust, lots of things going on. You can read and type into it. Couple things to call out though. KW Luxury, Brady Sandall, which many of you I know either play in the luxury space or desire to play in the luxury space. You should understand the KW Luxury community. Brady is a phenomenal asset to the organization. He is hosting a Zoom call on March 5th at 10 a.m. all around how do you achieve excellence in the standards of the luxury industry. And we're going to continue to put more of the KW Luxury community training and education onto our calendar, because Brady and his team deliver phenomenal resources that we need to make sure that you guys are aware of and taking advantage of. 2, Opportunity Knocks is coming up on March 10th. We have over 25 teams that have registered. You know someone that is thinking of joining a team, thinking about what it is that teams offer, or you're thinking about starting a team and what it is that you need to do to compete for talent, because at the end of the day, no matter what you do, whether you sell home or you sell widgets, talent is the differentiating factor to help you create scale. Don't get it twisted. It is all about talent. So 25 teams have registered. The leadership team is working hard to put talent in front of teams. If you're interested at all in any way possible about joining a team, you should be there. March 10th, 3 to 5 at the Zufari Conference Center, where we've hosted Bold numerous times. Cool? All right. Leverage series. For those of you thinking about hiring talent, you need to understand how to hire talent. The biggest mistake you can make is hiring the wrong talent. It sets you back, not only from an expense standpoint, but a time standpoint. And they say ROI on hiring the wrong talent is detrimental to future success. Patrick Woods, who is a dear friend of mine, will be teaching a class up in Minneapolis. And you say, why are you pushing a class in Minneapolis? Because some of you need to learn how to hire talent. Some of you have never hired talent. And some of you hire talent just to leverage something. And part of the process of hiring talent is how do you identify, find, and then set them up for success. That's what this course is about up in Minneapolis. And I really, really enjoy Patrick and what he presents in this topic. Remember this too, even if you don't go to the class and you take one thing away from this, leverage is always more work before it's less. Leverage is always more work before it's less. Real estate agents get it wrong because they try and leverage everything before and then if they say, oh my God, I hired someone, I'm paying them, I don't know, X amount of dollars a year, and this should be easy. And then they forget and they get frustrated to teach them, coach them, train them, and consult them within their systems and processes in order to set them up for success. Leverage is always more work before it's less. Yeah. Yes, Schroder.
So I actually did career visioning for my last hire. This is after having two different assistants that weren't a great fit. I did career visioning for part-time assistant, which felt super silly. Did all the steps. It was 1,000% worth it. It's the right person. So after the training, she just took it and ran with it and made it so worth it. So really consider doing this. It's really a great system.
Cool. Schroder, just for those on the Zoom call, said she made 2 hires before she went through the career visioning process. This career visioning process takes about 1,000 steps. She wasn't sure if she could see it all the way through, saw it all the way through, and now realized she hired the right person by following the system. Systems and models work when you follow the systems and models. Thanks, Schroder. All right, attacking mindset. I'm gonna go back to something I gave to you guys 3 weeks ago in order to set you up to understand how to attack the vision speech. Okay, and I shared with you a couple weeks ago that 25,000 listings came to the market in 2024, and the market closed almost 41,000 units. And my question to you is, first of all, are you done? The answer would be no, otherwise you wouldn't be sitting here. The second question is how do you look at 25,000 new listings and 41,000 closed units and say, I can't achieve my goals? Because when you put it into the perspective of what your goals are based on a unit count or how many listings you want to take, you should be able to look at that universe very abundantly and say, I can do anything I desire, I put my mind to, in the activities too. And so my challenge to the group a couple of weeks ago was pick something big and go after it. And the question was, what are your goals? Are they your standards? And there's a difference between relative performance and absolute performance. And it was interesting because you'll see that show up again during the vision speech. So here's vision speech part 1 that goes into the macroeconomic conditions of our environment. Okay. I always lead with some general commentary because they pontificate before they go into the slides. And so what did I take away from it? Okay. And I think point number 1 is most appropriate and valid. It was our jobs are to bring perspective and knowledge to our clients. If you don't have perspective, nor can you articulate your knowledge, what do you have to offer? If you don't have perspective, nor can you articulate your knowledge, what do you have to offer? We have to be the voice of reason and truth for our communities. And I think that will be vitally true heading into 2025 in southeastern Wisconsin, just based on what's going on in a macro environment and making sure that we're being the voice for our local communities. And it takes an expert to tell people how to move in this market. Okay? And you must do the activities that cause that to happen. Otherwise, your business will look like the market. And then my commentary below is the whole thing of absolute versus relative performance. Are you delivering on absolute performance based on what your set of standards are, aka your goals, or are you performing based relative to the market? And you must do the activities that cause that to happen, otherwise your business will look like the market. And no one's business, you don't, just real quick, you don't want your business to look like the market. I'll explain that why in a second. So here's a few things I'm going to dive into, the numbers that drive the U.S. real estate market, okay? Home sales on an annualized basis. Okay, what goes up must come down, and history repeats itself. What you notice here is from 04 to 07, you can see the drop, and then you can see the successive 5 years. It took 5 years to get above 5 million transactional units in the US. Okay, notice what happened. What goes up must come down. And we are entering into year 3. Okay. And the reason why I bring up year 3 is to understand that last year and the year prior, so 23 and 24, was the lowest 2-year stretch of transactional units back to back in over 30 years. Okay. So 33% of units disappeared in 2 years. The floor was defined by who had to move, and yet it did not get progressively better in 2024. Now, our market got slightly progressively better. This is where the importance of understanding the localized market. They're predicting it's 2 more years before it's progressively back. So this year and next year, 25 and 26, which is the reason why I went and highlighted for you 08, 9, 10, 11, and 12 to say, well, we've been here before. We've worked in an environment of this transactional level of units. And you have to understand the good news in it is it's never been worse, and the bottom is never 0 because people have life events and people have to move. So don't get it twisted. Our industry is in a recession. The challenge is our industry is the only industry in a recession, so there's little motivation to improve it. Okay, and I'll explain that here when we talk about GDP. When you look about home prices from an appreciation on a historical level, this is an important thing to understand going back to 1954. And basically what you have to see or understand is that appreciation and depreciation fluctuates over time, and buyers and sellers may transact at the top of the market, top of the moment, but never at the top of the market. Never at the top nor the bottom. Okay? And it's understanding how these events happen and how appreciation and depreciation fluctuates and keeping the long-term mindset, because most people are in their homes for 5 to 7 years. And what you notice is every 5 to 7 years, markets correct themselves. Okay? Perspective and knowledge and how you articulate it is important in this market. Home prices on an annualized basis, okay? I'm going to highlight for you the light blue line. This is the long-term annualized trend of 4% appreciation. Going back to I think the 1930s. Homes going up to 2025 have appreciated at a 4% clip when you spread that out over 75 years, okay? A couple things to point out is currently we are 9.9% above trend because of the appreciation levels we saw 21, 22, 23, 24. Okay. Projected in 25 nationally is a 2.5% appreciation of pricing. Right now, we're outpacing that in southeastern Wisconsin, something I'm paying attention to in the early part of the spring market. So you have a couple things to consider that they mentioned. 9.9% above the trend line is not horrible relative to where we were, which was unsustainable. We could have 0 appreciation for 2.5 years and still be on trend at a 4% annualized trend appreciation. Okay, which shows you how far out of whack it got during 21, 22, 23. Okay, getting closer to trend is good for affordability. Getting closer to trend is good for affordability. And the reminder they keep mentioning multiple times is it might be the top of the moment, but never the top of the market. Don't wait to buy real estate and wait. Okay. Total market volume. Okay. This is transactional volume that happened across the US in 2024. A couple things to point out for you. The dotted purple line is 2023 volume. Okay. And the light blue dotted line that goes up and down is NAR agent count. Fascinating here to see a few things that happened and then didn't come to fruition. First, during the 06 to 08 downslope, there was 1.3 million agents in the US. And from 2007 to 2008, we lost 140,000 agents to attrition within our industry. Now, what's interesting is in 2024, we were at 1.5 million agents across the US. And yet we only lost roughly 50,000 agents to attrition. The reason being is because the transactional volume was the third highest in recorded history. And so the challenge in it is the per agent productivity on the terms of a closed units has dropped by more than 50%, which I'll show you more of that data next week. But the agents were able to stay in the business and survive and advance because they were making more on a per unit basis, which mitigated it. Which is why, if you keep hearing in some of the dialogue and what I've communicated to you guys, is focus units, 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 units. You control your units, you control your relationships, the market gives you your volume, okay? And so the reason why we didn't see as much attrition during the most recent downturn is because volume and appreciation kept going up. And so people from an income standpoint didn't feel the impact as much. And yet, if they were paid really if you looked at it on a per unit basis, if the incomes went down by 54%, just like transactional units did, there'd be a lot more attrition. So it's somewhat deceptive. Transaction volume remains healthy. Inventory on an annualized basis, okay, homes across the US, couple points here. What you're seeing here is annual months of supply inventory, which is the bar graphs, okay? A balanced market is 6 months of supply, which is what you see in the dotted blue line, okay? And yet when you look at this, we've seen an increase in inventory slightly from it's more than slight when you look at it from a percentage standpoint. It just doesn't feel that way as we're transacting in our businesses. We've seen an increase in inventory, and in 2024, we saw 3.7 months of inventory of supply. We need more inventory. That's not a bad thing that it's going up. It's a slow climb, yet we need the climb. Demographics are in our favor long-term related to demand, and the issue with supply has been people aging in place longer and people sitting on low interest rate mortgages. It is the reason why pricing continues to appreciate despite rate hikes, because there has not been a shortage of demand and people are still sitting on inventory. And so yet, while we have seen an increase of inventory as it relates to months of supply, it's not necessarily a bad thing, and which is why we've continued to see appreciation continue to go, because there's still very healthy demand despite rates being in the mid 6s to 7s. Transitioning to mortgage rates, what you see here in the blue dotted line is the historical averages from 1972 to 2024. Okay, that average over a 40-year period, 60-year period, I don't know, my math's a little off today, is 7.7%. Again, I would go back to what the general commentary in the beginning. Your job is to bring perspective and articulate your knowledge. No one wants to hear, well, back in my day in the 1980s, I bought a house at 18%. I get it. No one wants to hear it, and perspective is important. Historical averages from 1990 to 2024 is a 6%. So when you look at where we're sitting on average in 2024, it was 6.7, and projected in 2025, it's going to be around 6.5. When you look at that versus the relative to the perspective of where the historical averages are, we're back to where the market's been. Helping people understand perspective is important. Mortgage rates continued. Couple things to point out. This is an interesting slide because it's been a lot of talk and commentary, and part of the reason why we felt a lot of pressure from an inventory standpoint. 74% of mortgages have rates 5% of less. Okay? And what you see is the various different rates and how much of the inventory is sitting on those rates. What has been fascinating though is if I were to pull this slide up from 2 years ago, 75% of mortgages were below 4%. And so what we're starting is life events have happened and people have been getting off of their 2.5% mortgages. You're starting to see the turnover of rates where the longer we go within this game, the less and less that pressure is of someone sitting on those really low interest rate environments. Okay. And here's some very interesting factoids that weren't on the slide that I took notes to their commentary. 38% of homes across the US are mortgage free. 76% of homes across the US have more than 50% equity. Okay, 38% are mortgage free, 76% of homes have more than a 50% equity. We exist to bring perspective in order to help them understand. Need to help your clients understand the math. The math always wins. Math always works. Okay, understand your math and be the economist of choice. Someone has equity, help them identify what that equity is and what they plan to do with it. Someone is buying at the top of the moment, they're never at the top of the market. It's understanding how the math works to help them understand what their game plan is with the asset they have on their balance sheet. Affordability. What you see here in the orange line is principal and interest as a percentage of their income and how it fluctuates over time. Couple things to point out. Affordability is absolutely an issue of concern. Okay. The percentage of household income dedicated to occupied homes, rates plus appreciation is the cause of why we're feeling the affordability issue. Okay. The expectation over life of historical averages, which is the blue dotted line, is 27%. From 2000 to 2023, it was 20%. And you can see heading into the crazy period of 21, 22, 23 is because of the rate environment, and yet not having seen the crazy appreciation, we entered into a period then where the appreciation took off, then the rates spiked, and affordability now is becoming an issue. So, U.S. economy. A couple things to point out. The economy in general is rock solid. I made a mention very earlier that housing is in a recession, but no other industry is. Okay, you have to understand that the Fed is basically targeting a 2.5% GDP increase year over year over year. In 22, we were at 1.9. In 23, we were at 2.5. In 24, we were at 2.8. The economy is rock solid, very healthy. The Fed's goal is to keep people employed without money getting out of whack with normal growth. So when we saw a 5.8% spike, the Fed had to pull the rates in order to slow that down. Okay. And so the challenge in it is because the economy is healthy and yet housing is really slow, there's just not a lot of motivation to move on rates, okay, in order to speed that up. That's why it's going to be why they're expecting a slow climb out of where we are. And yet, as I showed you earlier, everything happened. History repeats itself. Just make sure that we're having the appropriate mindset to it. Unemployment, 4% is a gainfully employed economy, okay? And so people need to be employed to buy homes. There's the positive measure in when we look at what is going on within our economy, people need to be employed in order to buy homes. And yet personal savings rates have dramatically dropped. You can see here in 2024, personal savings rates were at 3.8%. So part of our jobs is to bring perspective around affordability, bring perspective around saving and being the economist of choice, and helping guide people as fiduciaries as to how they can accomplish owning the dream of owning a home, right? So the commentary here as it relates to personal savings rates, and I think he was speaking directly to agents, is you have to live well below your means to mitigate future disasters that will show up. Whether they show up within your personal lives of a health event or whether they show up where, let's just say, a global economic crisis occurs and our industry goes down. Live below your means to mitigate future risk. We have to be serious about asset accumulation. You have to be serious about asset accumulation, and you will never regret it. I will just tell you on a personal commentary, I've had a lot of conversations with agents around wealth building. You know, the number one reason why agents don't build wealth? They don't have capital. You can't accumulate assets if you don't respect your capital. Okay? So if you think about wealth is Accumulating assets is around respecting the capital that you've earned, and then what you do and how you deploy it. Part of it is the delayed gratification. You never regret it. We have an opportunity to educate the power of real estate has in building people's net worth. Inflation's basically under control. You can see here in 2024, it was around 2.9%. 2025, they're projecting right around 2%. We'll see. This is then where he went into a bunch of stuff on tariffs and a lot of policy stuff that I will divert back to what we at the core of what we do. So economic risks in 2025, 3 things that we have to be paying attention to, which I think goes back to his commentary around we have to live well below our means in order to mitigate future disaster. Because if a future disaster were to show up, how would it show up? One is unpredictable policy around trade, immigration, regulation, and spending. And I'll tell you, if you have friends that work in manufacturing, it is a huge focus of theirs right now. Huge. Natural disasters, they continue to happen, and the impact of natural disasters we are feeling, okay, as it relates to our industry. And then international conflict. Now, things that actually matter to real estate is the price of real estate, the cost of money, and employment. Employment's healthy. The cost of money is, again, from a perspective standpoint, back at a level that it historically has been at in price of real estate. Appreciation gains have slowed, but as I've talked about, if we don't have any appreciation for the next 2.5 years, we're still on trend. Okay. So that was part 1. The goal of part 1 is to synthesize a 2-hour presentation for you around what is going on in a macro environment and how it impacts our real estate. Next week, I will overlay this to help you understand how it impacts our industry. And we'll talk a lot around sides per agent, volume per agent. We'll help you think around what is going on within the macro environment and how you can be the economist of choice for your clients to help you articulate your value as a fiduciary. And when you do, and you bring proper perspective, you will continue to win. And there was 41,000 units last year in our universe. You absolutely can achieve your goals because many of you did. And so as we, on a macro environment, start getting out of the sledge and you take share now, the share you take now, you won't give it back. So the challenge is can you do the hard work now and do the activities now in an environment where there's still 41,000 units in which that we all play, right? And so that as the tide continues to ride, that you're playing that game over the long term, not the short term. And what you do now might take time to show up. Overall, economy is healthy, people are employed, we need a good economy, and we need people employed in order to buy homes. I'll help you understand the impact of that next week. And the following week, I'll help you really dive into what's going on in southeastern Wisconsin to give you the data to help you understand what's going on through the first 8 to 12 weeks of the year. Sound good? Beautiful. It's 50 degrees in Milwaukee. The sun is shining. It was out and up at 6:30 a.m. The roosters were crowing. It's time to go to work, baby. Guys, thanks for showing up.